Earlier this year, we had the great lesson of the coming of the universe, otherwise known in Montessori as the great story. And when you think of that great story, you think of the dark coldness that was existence, that was all space. And then suddenly the Creator said, "Let there be light." And there was light in the form of this fiery mass that floated through space and leaving its tiny little droplets. And we know that one of those tiny droplets of light and heat was to become our sun, which we will use later as this. And one of those tiny droplets also became our earth. There's more to that story, but we remember those key details. And then we remember recently, we had some lessons where we talked about how important it is that the sun turns around itself and goes around the sun. I mean, we saw that chart where literally half of the earth is on fire and half of the earth is freezing. It's a big deal, and it's very important that our earth spins around itself and goes around the sun. Well, today I'm going to talk about another feature of our earth that is very important to us now and how we live our lives. But before we look at that specifically, I want you guys to think back into olden times. Now, I'm not talking about the 1980s. I'm talking about olden times than this, when people spent a lot more time outside and there weren't as many big buildings to block the view. People could see when they looked out every day where the sun was rising and falling. Now, fortunately, because we live on Lake Michigan, and in Milwaukee, we are able to look out and see the sunrise over Lake Michigan, and we can kind of get a glimpse of what people in olden times used to see, and we're lucky for that. So people in olden times would notice, as you might notice when you look out at Lake Michigan on a beautiful morning, that the sun doesn't always rise in the same place. They noticed that from a certain point in winter, the sun began to rise a little bit further to the north and continued until there came a day in the summer where the sun would begin to return to where it was rising in the winter. So people in olden times gave a name to this turning point in the sun's journey. They called it the solstice. That comes from two Latin words, sol, meaning sun, and sistere, which means to stand. They noticed that there are two solstices, or times when the sun would stand still and then go back its other direction. There is a summer solstice and a winter solstice. And you know what? It is still like that today. People also noticed that after the summer solstice, the days would start to get a little bit shorter. All that sunlight that they had starting early in the morning and going late into the night started to decrease. And as the winter came, the days would get shorter and shorter and there was less and less sunlight. I bet you're even noticing some of that right now, that the sun is not out as late as it used to be. And then in the winter, after that winter solstice, they would notice that the days began to get longer and longer and longer, and there was more sunlight. And then they would reach the summer solstice, which summer solstice is when we have our longest day and our shortest night. And that same thing happens today on our summer solstice, even now. Now think back to how in the summer and how long the days are, and you're able to get up in the morning, the sun is already up in the air, up in the sky, I should say, and you eat, you play, and you eat lunch, and then you're outside some more. Maybe you're going to camps, or you're with your family, or you're with friends, and then you eat your dinner, and the sun is still out even after dinner. Maybe even if your bedtime, depending on your bedtime, you might have to even go to bed before the sunlight is completely gone. And that's always kind of strange in the summer, isn't it? Well, I'm going to show you why that is today.